On November 7, 1972, Richard Nixon was re-elected President of the United States of America. In this harsh political climate, a forceful presidential campaign seemed necessary. Their tactics would turn out to be illegal espionage. In Nixon's push for re-election, on May 19, 1972, members of CREEP, also known as the Committee to Re-elect the President, broke into the Democratic National Convention and stole copies of secret documents, as well as attempting to bug office phones. This break-in would have been successful if not for a security guard working in the hotel. The guard found tape on the door that prevented it from locking and called the police. In fact, Nixon would have won in the race against Democratic candidate George McGovern, regardless of whether or not he successfully wiretapped the DNC, making the entire situation something that could have been avoided. In August of 1972, Nixon gave a speech swearing that his White House staff were not involved in the break-in.
I was appalled at this senseless, illegal action. And I was shocked to learn that employees of the Re-election Committee were apparently among those guilty.
Most American voters believed Nixon, and in November he was re-elected in a landslide. Later, it would be realized that he was not being truthful. Once the spies were arrested, they were vigorously interrogated. While most of the men stayed quiet, one of them, a former CIA officer named John W. McCord, refused to take the fall for it and started writing letters to federal judge John J. Sirica. His letters claimed that he and the other 4 burglars who had pleaded guilty had been pressured by White House officials. Behind closed doors, Nixon asked the CIA to tell the FBI to stop looking into Watergate with the excuse that it was a matter of national security. Nixon's tampering with the investigation was, in the eyes of the law, a far more serious crime than the actual break-in. Meanwhile, 7 conspirators were indicted on charges related to Watergate. By now, given the suspicious turn of events, a handful of people had begun to think that there was a larger scheme going on. Washington Post journalists Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein uncovered the dirty tricks behind the Watergate scandal. While the coverage and investigation of Watergate was on the rise, some of the people involved in the cover-up began to crack under pressure. Nixon's lawyer, John Dean, testified before a grand jury detailing the president's crimes. A former White House aide, Alexander Butterfield, also came forward to testify. During his testimony, Butterfield disclosed that Nixon had secretly taped every conversation that took place in the Oval Office, and that if they found the tapes, they would have proof of the president's guilt. The committee requested that Nixon hand over the tapes for investigation, but he refused and struggled to protect them.
There's nothing new, and most people around the country, I think that it's routine. Everybody's trying to bug everybody else. It's politics.
His lawyers argued that the president's executive privilege allowed him to keep the tapes. Despite this, John J. Sirica, the Senate committee, and an independent special prosecutor named Archibald Cox were all determined to find the truth. On October 12, 1973, the court ordered the president to surrender 9 taped conversations. In order to evade the court order, Nixon announced that he had come up with a compromise and that he would hand over edited summaries of the recorded conversations. When Cox refused to stop asking for the tapes, Nixon fired him. This led to several Justice Department officials resigning in protest. This all took place on October 20th, 1973, and became known as the Saturday Night Massacre.
But the general public often blamed the media for somehow stirring up, the tensions.
Within 10 days of the massacre, Congress received about 1 million letters. Almost all of them demanded that the president be impeached. Although Nixon was angry at the press for its outrageous, vicious, and distorted reporting, he nonetheless surrendered the 9 tapes to the court. Immediately, the tapes began to destroy the president. Before Nixon could be impeached, he resigned on August 9, 1974.
Before my term is completed is abhorrent to every instinct in my body. But as president, I must put the interests of America first.
His successor, Gerald Ford, gave a full pardon to Nixon, an unpopular decision among the American people. Ford's intention was to put the scandal behind the United States and start new with his administration.
So they became more and more willing to see everything as everything involving our civic life as a partisan war.
It caused people to question their leadership and think more critically of the presidency. American people finally saw that their president was flawed. Following the winding path of Watergate, many people decided to take up journalism and stick with it.